Again, thank you for being here. I'm Ronen Artzi, as said, I'm with AstraZeneca. I'm the technology, kind of lead of technology innovation for the Oncology Data Science and AI group. And today we're going to touch on biomarker discovery with multi-agent, but I think the main issue is actually multi-agent, right? We'll touch on biomarker, but that will not be the only issue. So I thought maybe we'll start with a Q&A. Any? Right. So I'll pick on somebody. What do you expect to get from this session? And not everybody, but any brave one? Dave? Sorry.
I want to see real world implementation.
Right. Okay. TDLR. To make it short, we're not there yet. Okay. So if everybody's waiting to see a real one kind of working in production and so on, again, maybe the other room. Anybody else? What do you expect to see? Why are you here? Yes.
Disparate data sources, genomics, proteomics, or things like that, and then AI helping us interpret the data, find the right biomarkers, or they could be digital biomarkers even.
Yeah, that's what I want to. Awesome. Again, we are heading there. We're not there yet. So the last one, last opportunity. Thank you. Yes.
So I'm here because I want to see how you are connecting the dots, or basically bridging between biomarkers and the AI and trying to discover new knowledge, right, using AI.
Okay, we'll try. I'm not sure. So again, thank you for coming. Really, I know that you have opportunities. It's a great weather. And thank you for coming. A little bit of AstraZeneca, right? I don't know how many of you know about AstraZeneca and so on, but we are at 45 or 46 billion kind of size-wise, if revenue is the way to look into it, right? A lot of it is spent on R&D. So we're definitely a science-led or kind of discovery-led company with about 16,000 plus R&D employees across the global. Depends on which one did we acquire last or partnership with, right? And we have exciting about 180. I mean, this slide deck, by the way, some of it was presented at AWS about December. So by then, I'm sure these numbers had changed a bit, but it will give you a little bit of sizable information. So about 180 project in our development pipeline. So they're really, really exciting. And some 15 NMEs in our late stage pipeline. And again, this is probably on the lower side these days. We're really, really excited about our pipelines and what we're doing. I'm really, really proud about it. So we'll touch it a little bit about the biomarker landscape, right? Again, we are fostering a unified framework across the business units to unlock the full potential of all the biomarker that we have or those that we will have through the data and through the insight that we're generating, right? We believe that we have extensive internal capabilities, whether this is data science capabilities, trial design capabilities, precision medicine capabilities. I mean, across the life cycle of creating a drug, testing a drug, providing it to patient, collecting the real world evidence. We believe that we have enormous capabilities. Again, some of them are unique, some of them are less. But nevertheless, this is a very exciting company to work with, and I'm really happy about it. When we look into our biomarkers, why are we interested in biomarkers? They're hitting on at least kind of four pillars, right? One is on this R&D biomarker analysis, right? This is where we are trying to generate insights from biomarkers to how to feed them into our drug discovery, drug development. The other one is actually patient stratification. How do we actually assign the right drug to the right people at the right time? This is crucial on that one. Trial design support, this is part of the life cycle, right? How do we do those in a very efficient way, in a way that will be meaningful, in a way that will achieve the goals of both the patient as well as the company? And the last one is really leading, kind of moving towards a biomarker diagnostic support. How do we deal with taking that into precision medicine, into the kind of nirvana of why drugs are being developed? How do they help patients and moving forward? Um, I think this is in a sense repeating, right? We're using the biomarker and the data towards faster, deeper research on our side, having a deeper and meaningful insight generation from the data itself. Enhanced collaboration, how do you do that in a collaborative way in which not just one group is actually aware of the biomarker, the insights and so on, but rather having the flow of the information, the insights from the discovery up to the other end, and then having a data-driven decision. I think one of the, most people when they're kind of presenting this kind of, they're taking it from the left to right and they have a kind of a very nicely generated flow from bottom to top and so on. I think what's really exciting is this loop back. How do you take it from across the life cycle in a sense, or across those pillars, and actually feed from one to another? And by that token, having an accelerated insight, accelerated way of delivering value to the business and obviously to the patient themselves. When we're looking into biomarker, and again, we'll use it as a biomarker, but later on we'll go into agents and beyond. I think you can look into the question that we have from complexity and impact perspective, right? So some of them you can see, and we are kind of looking into that from trivial complexity to a lower, to medium, to high complex. And some of them you don't really need AI, right? I mean, we are here in AI kind of space, and everybody's talking AI, agents, and so on. This is awesome. But the trivial one, just a search, right? If you have the right data and you correlate it, this is a trivial search and lookup. Now, by the way, when I'm saying AI, I know everybody's thinking of artificial intelligence. For me, this is about accelerated impact, right? So don't tell anybody. I mean, I might be recorded, but it's my side when they say AI, it's accelerated impact, because today it's artificial intelligence, tomorrow it's going to be quantum technologies, right? Computing, and the next day it's going to be totally something else. Yes, we are focusing on agent and AI and artificial, but remember, it's not just about AI. So the trivial one are really, really direct lookup. Nothing more than that. I mean, yes, the problem of taking data, collecting data, correlate data, and so on, it's still a problem, right? And some of us have solved it. Some of us have solved it in a small scale, some of us in a big scale, but this is still a challenge. I think that AI could help on that one, and we'll look a little bit later about the 4 pillars, but still a challenge, a big challenge on that one. The next one is kind of what we call a low simple correlation, and I think you can see what is a co-occurrence associated with biomarker prevalence in a special area. I think this is number 3 over here. This is kind of lower. To do that one, it's not just about lookup, but taking some data and doing some cross-correlation with it, which again, it's a problem. It's a solvable problem, assuming that you had solved identification of the record, the patient, and so on, right? ID correlations is extremely important on that one. But again, a known problem, a solvable problem. The medium one and the high complexity, these are the ones that might need different way of thinking about the problem statement, right? For example, the complex Y, what are the core prevalence patterns of biomarker in relationship to other biomarkers? So this is definitely a complexity high, and the impact is probably 4 out of 5. And let's look into the last one, which is probably 5 out of 5, or at least complexity really, really high. This is about what is the ideal biomarker for indication X. What makes this one complex and so complex on that front? Any idea? So one of the challenges is the word ideal, right? What does ideal mean and to whom? Is it ideal from the patient perspective, the company perspective, to the scientist perspective, and so on, right? But the complexity is definitely high on that one. So what do you need to deal with those kind of questions? It's not trivial, right? You need to decompose the question, really, really understand it. Let's first of all disambiguate the terms over there. What does ideal mean? And once you figure out what does ideal mean, what does it take to handle this ideal question, right? How do I break it? How would I, even as a human, kind of address this kind of question? What kind of skills do I need to do to be able to answer that one? And once I broke it, understood it contextually and so on, I need to start to plan about how do I go about it? And when I want to go about it, it's about, do I have the right skills, scientific-wise? Do I have the right resources to deal with it? Let alone, do I have the right data? Do I have the right ways to actually stitch it together? And even beyond that, why am I even asking this question, right? What's the business goal that I have? And can I tie the business metric into this question, into those resources that eventually will provide me with the right solution on my side? So hopefully, at least you understand that these are some of the questions that we have on the biomarker side, but you can take almost any domain and kind of break it in the same way, right? What's the complexity? What's the impact? Do we have the resources, the skill, and do we have the business problem to deal with it? So I think that while most of you are here because of the biomarker, but I think it's interesting on many other planes about how do I map a domain to those questions, how do I address it, and would AI or any other techniques that we have will be able to solve it. And sometimes you'll realize, okay, since this kind of way of thinking might be really, really hard on the biomarker side, can we take it into another place, apply the technologies? Maybe we have less of a regulatory changes over there, right? Maybe the impact will be big enough on that front, and maybe we should be able to think about that. So just a thought around this one. So again, biomarker, I know Dave was really, really looking to see how do we do that in real. And I already stated we had not solved it yet for biomarker. However, we're going that way and we're doing some tests and some experimentation around it. So when we look into the concept of augmented scientists, right, or at least on the biomarker side, you can see, and apologize by the way, I'm going this way, but you can see on the slide, the left-hand side, the biggest pillar of all is about the data, right? How do we collect data? How do we collate data? How do we represent data? How do we manage knowledge generation? And how do we address knowledge repositories? So we've been investing many, many years on that one. I'm sure that every organization over here is at some place of this kind of life cycle, or at least where they are on the maturity of this place. Any hands, kind of by hands, who think he solved the problem? Okay, solve it partially, and from 1 to 5, let's say level 4. Excellent. 2. Okay, either we are not on the data side or we don't believe we solve it, but so we're working on this one, right? We've spent many, many years on this one. We have tons of fair analytic, fair data kind of initiative. Does everybody knows what fair data is? Excellent. So last year I was here actually talking about fair analytic or fair square analytic. So while we're still trying to solve the fair data, it's not enough. I believe that we need to solve the concept of a fair science, right? And we don't have to wait to solve fair data to start to think about fair science, how science is being findable, how science is being reproducible, and so on. But in order to do that, we need to start with data, sprinkle a little bit about how data is related to method, where does the results of that method and data input will be saved, and by that token, we'll start to have some kind of a control of our science, right? And that was last year kind of a presentation, and that was where we had selected Domino to be our partners, right? Because we thought it could be the foundation for this kind of concept of fair analytics. So while we had started the journey on that one, definitely using Domino, and very happy about this kind of way of thinking, right? Some of us on the implementation side are still working on putting Domino in place and really, really helping science to be reproducible, to show us the flow of science is the way to work. Now, on the innovation side, on my group, we definitely think that this is great, right? But flow of science is not just to the scientist. Flow of science is also to the agent or to the collaborator for the scientist itself. It's for both the executive, the scientist, as well as whoever is helping them. So we are now experimenting actually with the next generation of who's a scientist. And a scientist could be an agent on that front. The scientist could be any automation kind of process that the data scientist itself is doing. So when I'm looking into, for example, Domino project, right? Most of us are looking at that as a human project, if I'm not mistaken. Most of us are kind of looking into this is one-to-one, my scientist, or maybe 2 scientists creating a project, and that's all, right? So in the fair analytic, that was great, but one project is feeding to the next group as an input, the other group will take it, so that enabled the flow of science. But I think on top of it, in order to really, really accelerate it, we wanted to see automations, right? We wanted to see science done not just by human, but rather the repeatable pieces, the repeatable component could be done by any automation that is there, not necessarily AI. We'll get to the AI later, but this is why I was so excited to see some of the MCP servers that were presented, right? Some of the vibe coding or vibe model that was presented. Actually, I'm thinking about the vibe science, okay? But we'll put that one aside in a second, right? Because again, vibe science is about the ability to stay out, being able to take a concept and just do it. If we need a person to do it, a human being, we'll introduce him, either through the activity that they'll do or through the governance that is needed. But if we're not, a lot of it could be potentially just accelerated by creating component, automation component, agents, and so on, that will be able to take the trivial tasks. We'll be able to run that trivial as a workflow, whatever, lock it as a project, making sure that this result will feed into the next result, right? And now we created a really accelerated science, at least on the things that could be automatable, okay? We'll see later on how we deal with it. So I guess I'm really hallucinating. So if somebody kind of raise your hand and say you are off, let me know. I'll try to move on. But I was talking about the data side, right? So we're talking about the 4 pillars. The next evolution beyond the data, once we figure out the data, but we don't have to wait for the data to be figured. We can take it domain by domain or component by component, modality by modality. I don't think we have the time to finish, to wait until all the data is being done, right? I think there is still value on either do it by modality or potentially 2 or X number of modalities to be integrated. Every time you're creating a fusion, integration of the data, or the compute and so on, you bring value to us, you bring value to the patient, right? So I know that some organizations say, well, let's wait until we are fair. I don't think we can wait. We just need to move forward, right? We need to look into that as a kind of a cutting edge and cutting cross and just move forward. So this is the data side. We're still working, we're having knowledge bases, we have everything, happy to talk about them. We're also introducing AI into each one of the layers. How do you clean the data? How do you integrate the data? How do you apply ontologies into it? But this was about the biomarker, so we're kind of moving forward, right? And to some degree, this is an old view, right? It was presented in December and we're moving forward, but this is old. But you can see that on the knowledge retrieval, we definitely started to look into, can we apply some intelligence over there? How do I retrieve knowledge, right? If I have a question, how do I decompose it? And this is where we start with the concept of augmented scientists. This is about helping the user in his own quest. The augmented scientist uses an AI system to enhance his or her capabilities to actually generate value or generate knowledge. In order to do that, this is where we are introducing those 2 layers. One is this objective or kind of objective-driven augmentation layer. This is where I think the magic is happening. The rest, well, you can argue that you can take this layer and kind of spread it all over the place. But this is where a goal is being decomposed to the semantic. What does that mean, right? This is where a problem answering planner is being introduced to the system. When I'm taking something, how do I break it? How do I break it to what is being asked? And per ask and per goal, how do I plan to address it, right? The later one is the scientific reasoner that is being introduced. We're going into the retriever itself, and then to persona-based response. If you think about that, after this layer, from the scientific retriever up, this is about the question is being asked from above. However, all the rest is actually a decomposition of things to be able to answer that question. And you don't necessarily have one. This is about multiplication of those capabilities, right? And we might start with one if the problem is trivial, and we might have many of them if the problem needs to be decomposed and then recomposed together to answer the question. And the last one is persona-based response. I think one of the things that we are, and you can tie it if you, I'm a great believer kind of in those circulars, but what is a persona-based response? Actually, the question, if you think about it, some of the contextual is who's asking the question, right? I mean, if my executive, if my head of oncology is asking the same question, then let's say my head of data science, the question might be the same question, they might mean something else. I might need to ask different questions of those people to clarify the answer or to make sure that whatever I'm providing to them as an answer is the right answer for them. So this is one aspect. The other one is that I think I'm trying to get out. You see the application, we used to have dashboard and so on. One of the things that we're trying to break is that, why do we need a dashboard? Why do I need a hard-coded way of conveying things to people? And usually what we found that the question that we spend a lot of resources having beautiful, beautiful application, and then the executive come and say, oh, even there, how many tries do we have? Oops, the BA forgot to ask this question. Didn't work, right? And then I'm exaggerating, right? I mean, usually he will ask that question. But for me, a lot of those applications are actually hard-coded application, right? Somebody thought was really, really opinionated about what will be the question of ask, and people will come from a totally different angle. So understanding who you are, trying to, on one hand, predict what your question will be, will have value. The other one is really cater to your needs, as I understand your problem, is key on that one. So we're looking into each one of those 5 layers and trying to see what's the art of the possible over there. Do we have an answer to that? But I would really, really like to get out of the hard coding problem that is there. And it's not about taking the job of the great BAs that we have or the programmers that are writing dashboards, but rather take him to the next evolution, right? What do we really mean? Help me to understand what do we mean and how to craft this one. And by the way, we're doing a lot of vibing. Lately, code vibing, science vibing, and so on. Teaching BAs, teaching product owners, and so on, to be able to express, to articulate a problem, come up with a potential solution, and that's really creates a very interesting dynamic between the one who understands the question, the one who can really think about the concept of a product and so on, and the one that needs eventually to develop it at the production level. Because so I think I spoke already too much on this one, but if there is a burning question, let me know. Okay, so this is a short detour, if I may. Unless you have question about the previous one. Any burning questions? No. Sorry, I'll take my... And these are not special glasses. I just broke my other, so this is not like the fancy one that were there in the morning. I wish I would have them. We do believe that foundation models are actually a tectonic change, and I think it was mentioned before, right? We don't see just, it's a language model and so on, but we really, really believe that this is a major, major change. And you can read as well as I do, right? But some of it is about how much data was invested in actually training those LLMs, right? And the amount of information that they have. But really, it's about how do they adapt to new clinical domains? How do they adapt with some few examples? You take a foundation model, and with very little, you can generalize it moving forward. Give it some examples, really tune it towards a different direction where it was really previously done, right? So we don't necessarily have to build those huge models upfront, but with the little guidelines, we can achieve a lot on that front. Now, saying that, just a disclaimer, AZ just signed a very big contract with Pentos and Tempos, right? It was about a month ago, that we're going to create with them the biggest oncology foundation models that was built so far. But I think that, well, this is exciting, right? That model does not exist today, so tomorrow there will be a new one, right? So while I really, really appreciate that, I think we really need to understand the foundation of the technology itself. How do you take it to the next level? But always think about how can I take something else that is available? Maybe that will be another kind of path to evolution on that front. So we talked about, again, the tectonic, right? Rapid fine-tuning will give you a tremendous result. Zero shots and few shot learning, right? I mean, we're really, really looking into surging into the accuracy, right, of new tasks with very little, very no labeled kind of introduction into the model itself. Definitely see a lot of multimodal capabilities being emerging. This is really exciting for us. It's not, I mean, I'm not really saying anything new, right? I mean, the lecture today said it. I mean, everybody knows this is not just text anymore. This is about images. This is about voice. This is about any kind of thing that you can imagine that goes into thinking about biomarkers is already kind of starting to emerge or integrate together. And what's really exciting is when the same model can do it, But even if they cannot, if you try to take multiple agents, each one of them is an expert by itself, and start to actually, I wouldn't say negotiate, but consult one to another, right? That provides you a tremendous opportunity over there, right? And I can go to more and more, right? Continuously ingestion, right? New publication. This is something that keeps learning. And I'm using learning as a very kind of light, right? What does learning mean? But basically, you can introduce more and more articles, more and more images. That thing, which is a statistical model in some cases, learn and can generalize to the next level. So we are really, really excited to see and to see what happens when you take our own data and feed it into those models that by themselves are already general or can generalize them by themselves. What did I miss? And we believe that LLMs or those foundation models, sorry, I'm trying to move from LLM is the old one, right? The LCMs these days, which is large context models, right? Forget about the term itself, but rather how do they serve as brain to the next evolution? And the next current evolution is agents that we're talking about. And I know that everybody said that this is the next hype, but we are really excited about the hype, okay? And I think what's interesting about the hype is that you take that brain that we used to talk to it and extract token. If somebody was, I think it was the NVIDIA ICO that mentioned that, and now you connect to it the ability to be autonomous, you create it to edit the ability to act on it, you add the capability to reason, or at least to provide kind of a closed loop on that one. This is really, really exciting. So this is indirectly excitement about the foundation model because they're feeding into the way that we work on the next evolution of entities. And by extension, by the way, I can see a foundation model is kind of extending us as human beings. I know that we said, oh, this is just a token generation. But basically, I mean, yes, I'm recorded. I'm using my wife's memory for many things I'm forgetting, right? But if you think about it, this is a second brain, right? To some degree, this is an extension of what you don't necessarily know or can augment yourself. How much time do we have? Definition of agents. I mean, who is playing with agents by show of hands? I mean, who is working with agent, playing with agent? What is an agent for you, Ian? Ian is my colleague, so he's not ready to.
My hand is dirty yet.
I know, but you can read what's saying.
I can't read that far. No, so what I'm doing with agents is, so I'm in the product space, so we're working with them beyond chatbot, but more to put process and automation over top of a lot of the work that we do every day when it comes to reviewing requirements and talking to stakeholders. We're actually trying to build agentic personas of our users so that we don't actually have to talk to them.
This is awesome. We still have some time. Keep talking. No, but I didn't plan on that one. But again, agents, as we defined, right, by it's not our definition, right? It's an autonomous piece of software that uses artificial intelligence. Doesn't have, by the way, to be artificial intelligence. As we said, this is what accelerates impact. This is right, but artificial intelligence is one component of it, assigned by the user and to actually the ability with autonomously execute a task, right? I would also add that it's much more interesting when it's not just doing a task as it's been told, but rather giving an objective and trying to drive into it, right? And this is where really, really it's getting excited. Doing tasks, I mean, whether this is prescribed or not, this is great, but starting to add this goal-driven planning into, that's where really, really we're getting the most out of it. So it has autonomy, perception, decision-making, action, and learning, the way that we are saying here. Again, it's not our definition, but I think these are the kind of consensus about what they are. And if anybody finds something else, let me know. But we keep adding as we find it useful. I think what they are not, and I think that to some degree we had those mistakes internally. You know, we on the business did not drive AI as a starting point. IT were driving. I think now the business is changing to believe that it should be coming from the business metric. It should be coming from the business objective. We have the understanding of why we need them, potentially find the right use cases, understanding enough technologies. This is why we had recruited people like me and others to be part of the business, to be able to somehow bridge the discussion between the technology as well as the business of the science need. I think if it's just going to be a technology play, it's interesting but not impactful enough. If it's just scientific based, there might be lacking this bridge. So the bridge between technology and science is needed in the business. I think Steve Jobs said that awesome things happening when art meets technology. I would say that even awesomer, if there is a term like that, is happening when art meets technology meets science. And I think that's what's happening within the oncology data science group and within AstraZeneca on that front. But anyway, this is, we're hiring. Just kidding. Well, we are, sorry. So a little bit about what makes an agent different, right? And you can see the various kind of pillars on that one. I will not go through all of that, just given time, but definitely on the capability. So if you're looking into the task scope, this is a dynamic multi-step kind of scope, right? It's not only just content creation, right? It's not just a fixed predefined things, but this is a dynamic element when you talk about the scope. The scope is defined by the goal, and then you start to move from it. Looking into decision, definitely we're moving towards automated judgment, autonomous judgment. Saying that, you'll see later on, or well, maybe you will not see, but I'll definitely talk about it. Some of the value we're really getting is not just by the agent that need to plan or to do the job, but rather also introducing critique agents in order to say, well, are you sure? Or we know something else. Introduce it almost like a second way of thinking. And to some degree, from my background, serving in the Air Force and so on, we had always after a mission a kind of a debriefing. Everybody could say what they think, okay, about the topic and so on. It's critical to hear different opinions, in a very constructive way, and that's what we're trying to create with the agent side, right? It's not just about I'm planning something and you'll do that, but rather is there something else, right? Have you considered? Are you complete and so on? So we're not fully there, but that loop of critique and validation is extremely important. And I'm being signed that there are some 10 minutes, I think, so I'll try to move forward. Different agents and patterns, right? And I can give the slides later on, or at least maybe Domino can provide them, but you can see that we're talking about different patterns over there: reflection, planning, tool usage, and collaboration. Each one of them is a pattern, especially if you're talking about beyond just a single agent, right? And what we had found that having the right tools to the right agent is critical. It's critical, right? So moving to more than one agent is great, and moving to multiple agents with the right tools is critical. Who knows what this tool is? Have anybody heard about Manus AI? Not Ian. No. So DeepSeek was introduced, created a lot of news in the industry. It's a Chinese kind of base model, cheap-wise, accelerated in training and so on. Everybody was really excited. And then another Chinese company came with Manus. And they came, so anybody heard Manus, used Manus? Awesome. Are you from the team? Okay. I thought I have questions to you if you are. But anyway, they did an awesome job, right? And what you see here is actually, if you know what you want and select the right agent, let's the magic really start. So on the left side, there was an articulated by one of our BD group, but that's what you wanted, right? Retrieve all publicly available data on ctDNA asset, and you can read what's there, right? And you just press run. And what you'll see here, if this will enable me. So the tool is running, right? A single question, the tool started to run. What's happening over here is actually creating his own machine, searching the internet, writing the code, doing the planning, integrating everything, right? Awesome. He's searching the web, doing so many things, and eventually there is an application over there that the BD said, wow, this is something that the IT told me that will take me 12 months to do, and this is public data sets and so on. So there will be a question, I'm sure, about regulatory and other things, right? I mean, absolutely, quite question. But some of those tools can serve more than just scientific and regulated kind of questions. But what you see here is actually a single agent, highly polished, using about 39 tools at a time, and creating something. But what you've seen, and I think Domino today showed us this VS Code that somebody can vibe the code on a science. This is an IDE for businessmen, right? Think about that. He just had a question, and the question could be everything from do a research up to create an application, and that tool will do for him. So it's a different way of what is an IDE for you as a business person and so on. And as long as you know how to articulate the problem, we can start to think about solution. Anyway, so back to Biomarker. Sorry, that was a really detour on that one, but I thought it might be needed. And we have tons of other technologies and other thinking around it. By the way, we are developing our own Manus internally, and this is where we are really getting to understand. And we really believe that, you know, you can read books, you can read articles and so on, unless you really had your hands on and really implement it, you don't really know what's there and what is there. So going back to Biomarker again, the question that we had over there, and this is some of the question, right? How do patients with KRAS mutation respond when treated with DUVA in solid tumors? Anyone know the answer? I don't. Well, some people know, right? But so this is where we started, you know. And if you think about this as a recursive notion, the same concept could be to the smallest questions as well as the high-level questions. And I think that's what should be really you should take back home, right? If you build the right abstraction and the right capabilities, you can start small and then really, really go up to the questions. The more you introduce better brains, better tools, and so on. So in that kind of high-level question, first of all, you need to go to some kind of contextualization problem, right? What did the person really mean? What does he mean for the terminology? What did he mean from what he's trying to do? And once you have it, right, you push into a goal-oriented plan agent. I'm trying to accelerate. I mean, you can see that because I know that. And once you go to have a plan, right, once you have a plan about how to address the high question, then you go into a kind of an orchestration level, right? This is about, if I have a plan, how do I sign into the various experts that I have, whether these experts are each represented by an agent or by a human being as part of it, right, about the execution of the plan. But in a really thing, if you think about Manus and so on, this is done recursively because a question, even a sub-question, might need a planning by itself, might need to go to other experts, might need to do a consolidation between them, assess what they're doing. And then you're kind of, and this is what we're trying to convey here. There is a plan, right? And then everything is being composed up and up until you answer the goal that the organization had, the person had, and so on. But again, you can try it at a very small level, you know, between me and my automation, and then you can go between me and my executive. I think the other piece that I said, it's extremely important to have the right tools. The right tools really, really make a difference. So when we talked about Manus, people thought this is AGI, right? A lot of agents. But if you really decompose it, it's a single agent, 39 tools. They're just doing a great job. One tool knows how to manipulate a unique box. The other one knows how to search the internet. The third one knows how to stitch them together and spit out a Node.js application, right? So, and this is about a single tool. Now think about what do I do about multiple of those? Each one has its own kind of expertise. Each one is honed on a very specific domain and the knowledge that it has. Okay, the future, but who knows what the future is? Somebody was asking you, can you anticipate 10 years? Honestly, when we're working with our IT and they want to choose an agentic framework or at least a model, we say, these things are changing so rapidly. So the only thing, if I want to get one blueprint of my people and so on, they need to be agile. You know, everything should be able, you need to be able to switch it up, including myself, right? Sorry. And so including myself, right? Everything, you cannot bite one of them. You just need to make sure that everything has an interface conceptually. Everything is being articulated in the right way, the right interfaces, human interfaces, machine interfaces, it doesn't really matter. And then everything should be able to be added once, in and out. This is one takeaway. The other one is that people are talking to me about waste, right? And I'm being paid to, well, oh, it's recorded. I'm being paid to play and so on. And people are saying, well, you're creating the depth, right? The technology depth and so on. But sometimes when I'm looking into it, this is about the value versus the cost. right? As long as my value is tremendous and the cost is understandable, or at least the replacement, or at least the exit strategy is clear, it's valuable, it's meaningful to the organization, right? It's adding value, it's adding excitement, it's adding value to my patient as well as the business. So there is always this balance between what's the value, what's the cost, what's the exit strategy moving forward.